Now, into the ticket office of Disneyland.
Oh boy, let's do this.
Don't think the CIA is going to be trying to hack your second-gen iPod.
I didn't think so. There might have been a lot of illegal music on there. I wouldn't doubt it. But, I mean...
You were supposed to bring death to the flagships, not join them.
That's a pill with two screens and it's open and you gotta swallow it.
iTunes is a constant source of embarrassment.
Behind-the-scenes camera crap.
Here, tell us about courage, Phil. Tell us about courage.
I am Nadella. I can't do it anymore without laughing. I was going to do the whole thing.
Welcome everyone to the Calling All Platforms podcast. I am your host Wes and I'm here with Landon.
Hi, how you doing?
And Caleb.
Surprisingly, I feel fine.
I took a Benadryl. Does that count? I might sound a little off.
You know, Benadryl usually makes me feel pretty good in the minute before I go to sleep.
Yeah, the minute. Anyway, we're here to talk all things tech this week on our episode 244. Can you believe it's been 244 episodes?
Is that which episode we're on? I
I
should
mean,
know
I
that.
suppose I can believe that.
I did a little research. I was like, I wonder what episode. Wow.
Yes, you are correct. This is
244.
episode 244. Good job.
You double checked me? How dare you? I
Is anybody
literally have
surprised?
it up right here to make sure on my podcast app to make sure. Man,
The drama is real. We don't edit this stuff.
the drama, no, the trust is gone is what it is. I
Can you
did my
blame me?
research. No, I don't blame you. I would have double checked too, but I'm still giving you crap.
It's fair.
Anyway. Oh man, it's been quite an effort to try and get some news this week. Let's be real. I will go ahead and start this off by saying we're not going to talk about the Activision Blizzard Microsoft merger versus Sony. I just don't want to get into it.
Valid.
Just because it's just kind of a drama fest, a $1 trillion company trying to fight a $1 billion company. I don't know. Doesn't sound fun to talk about.
Which of those companies is $1 trillion?
Isn't Microsoft the trillion?
I don't think so. I think it's just Apple, Amazon, maybe Google at this point. I don't think Microsoft is quite there yet.
I could have swore they were.
Landon is checking for us.
Are you checking, Landon? This is probably where it's good to do the check because I may be wrong. I could have swore they were a $1 trillion company.
He double checks the number of the podcast episode for us. He double checks market capitalization of various companies for us. It's, you know,
You also are a podcast engineer, so he does a lot.
he does everything. Let's be honest, listener. Landon is the podcast. We're just here for show.
You guys are the faces of the podcast, right?
Yeah, definitely the faces.
That's why it's audio only.
Exactly. We have a face for radio, don't we?
Well, I'm
Yeah.
seeing something that's showing revenue at $168 billion for 2021. I'm not seeing...
Oh, I don't know how you really find
Company worth?
I
Like,
just
you
typed
kinda
in
have to-
Microsoft value.
Oh.
Biggest.
Oh, okay. So no, their current market capitalization is 1.8 trillion. So actually, yeah, they're in that $1 trillion range. So
And
okay.
you doubted me. You
I did.
doubted me
So
again.
did
That's
you.
straight
That's,
two.
that's the second time
So did
in
you,
as many
Wes.
minutes.
You
I
doubted
don't want to
yourself
let
on
my
that one.
streak. I don't want to let my streak run out here. So I'm going to pass the torch over here to Caleb. Let's see what he has to talk about. So
Oh, that's okay. There you go. All right, listener. As Wes has said, it's been a slow news week. This is to be expected because, you know, there was a major U.S. holiday, and the only thing that happens around this particular major U.S. holiday is sales on absolutely everything.
yes.
Now,
Yeah.
that being said, there was an article about Apple published on the Mac Rumors website just this past week titled, "What Apple Product Are You the Most Thankful For?"
What?
This may be the look, Mac Rumors was just really scraping the bottom of the barrel this week. trying to get content of any kind.
What was the number one thing?
Oh, you know what? I did not read the article. I looked at the headline and I immediately moved on because I am not that kind of an Apple customer.
You'd have to go through the comments to see.
Oh gosh.
And there's 332 comments.
Look, that comment section is 100% guaranteed to be nothing but a flame pile. Isn't
that most comments though?
Freaking gasoline on liquid methane. That's what that is. I don't.
The top rated comment, the first one has a score of 89 votes. Says the Apple polishing cloth is their favorite. What they're the most thankful for.
Please tell me that's trolling. That has to be troll.
The entire comment is the Apple polishing cloth. We think you're gonna love it.
that is a joke, 100%. Oh, that's good. That's good. I'm glad that sarcasm still wins in the Mac Rumors comment threads.
Yes. Thank goodness.
Yeah, that's I don't know. If I were to take this question seriously, I suppose you could say that I am genuinely thankful for the original Macintosh, for the iMac/iBook, kind of like those kind of go hand in hand, and the iPod probably, because I feel like each of those marked major paradigm shifts for the entire computing industry that were generally very positive. So it's not necessarily that I'm super thankful for that Apple product specifically, but more so just kind of the idea that drove that Apple product and the fact that somebody developed something like that and put it out there. Could it have been done by somebody other than Apple? Yes. Like, Apple is not really anything special other than the fact that they have now spent so long as being the most successful tech company in the world that everything they do is a market trend suddenly, which over the past few years has been far more frustrating than it has been, good. So
yeah,
that's why I feel like this is kind of a stupid article, because it's all like, yes, if I look back 20 to 40 years, I can find Apple products that I'm happy about. Like, yeah, glad those happened. I'm grateful that those happened. But looking over the past few years, like, where there's some good products, absolutely. The new MacBook Pros, for instance, are fantastic computers. Have there been some really stupid products? Sure. Just in the past month, they launched the dumbest iPad. But I don't know.
Okay, so the other thing that gives me a little bit of faith in humanity, faith in at least the humanity inside the comments of this article. So there's the top rated one that we already read, which is fantastic. And then the second rated one says, "Oh no, I don't like this at all. Apple products are tools like any other. They're cool tools that I enjoy in using them, but I'm not thankful for them. This feels like some real cult of Apple stuff."
Yep.
And yep, you're right.
Yep. That's fair. I'm glad that people upvoted those.
Yes.
Now, there are 300 some odd other comments that are not those and probably aren't quite so well thought through.
Yeah.
Generally speaking, but just don't read the comment thread at large. It's happier out here.
Here's another fun one. This is a little farther down. Kind of like asking a heroin addict what poppy he's most thankful for. So, there's that.
There, yeah.
Also not wrong.
Oh, man. Oh, dear. Okay. That's good.
And you
stuff.
thought this was going to be a terrible episode. Listener. We got it.
Yeah. Well, I mean, Mac Rumors was scraping the bottom of the barrel looking for content, and we're right down at the bottom of that same barrel scraping their comment thread.
Yep.
For content. So let's move on.
Okay.
So there was something that actually happened at the beginning of this past week that seemed significant, turned out to be slightly less significant, but still, it's reasonable. You should pay attention to it, listener. There were significant price cuts to the Ryzen 7000 processors from AMD. So these are their brand new Zen 4 powered fresh stuff that performs basically lockstep with Intel's high-end 13th generation stuff in a way that makes you feel like, yes, competition in the CPU space is really on fire right now. Now, that being said, it's kind of a hard sell for Ryzen 7000 because Intel's chips that perform the same as theirs are less expensive, and you don't necessarily have to buy a brand new motherboard in order to use Intel stuff. You can buy their 12th generation motherboards and just get a BIOS update to use 13th generation chips. So, like at the beginning of the past, a week and a half ago, you might have been able to say, I feel like Intel has the edge here because they're priced a little bit cheaper. It's a difference of like between $30 and $50 on their high-end chips. And to be fair, depending on the Intel chip, like their mid-range stuff is absolutely curb stomping AMD's stuff. So, but the beginning of this past week, price cuts to basically all of AMD's currently available 7000 series processors. Now, the way that it was originally shown on AMD's website made it seem like these might be permanent price cuts, but it actually looks more like these are going to be seasonal holiday price cuts, which is still good. Like, go buy them right now. It's a good thing. And they currently undercut Intel's chips by about $30 to $50, depending on the processor you're looking at. So it basically just flipped the table on Intel right there. So, right now they seem like they're probably the better deal, but worth noting at the end, around Christmas time or maybe the beginning of the year, these are probably going to go back up in price, but it's a question as to whether or not they go back to their original MSRP or they go back to something between the sale price they're at now and their original MSRP, which would put them pretty much price competitive with Intel's processors. So essentially, competition is in fact alive and well in the CPU space right now, and that means we're getting very steep sale prices on extremely new processors, which is great. That's fantastic. Love this.
Yes, good start.
Everything about Ryzen 7000 and Intel 13th gen is great. Like, good generational improvements in terms of computing power, reasonable efficiency for both sets of chips, but obviously they are very hungry chips at the high end in terms of power, but the mid-range stuff and lower end stuff is also getting better, and has really solid generational improvements for both of them. And then you have stuff like, AMD is now putting Zen or RDNA2 graphics cores in all of their desktop processors, which is just absolutely fantastic. You can build a low-end gaming PC just by buying a Ryzen 3 chip and calling it a day. Like, so there's a lot of really good stuff happening in the CPU space right now, and actually getting price cuts on processors is one of them. So that's pretty cool.
Yeah, I agree.
Now, on the other side of the computing industry, in the area where there is no real competition at the high end currently, Nvidia is. So you may recall when they announced their 40 series GPUs that I had a bit of a conniption fit over how insulting it was that something like the RTX 4080 12 gig existed at all. They had a 12 gig and a 16 gig that were both fundamentally different GPUs that used a different GPU core. They were not the same. They called them both 4080. There's a whole episode where I spend like 20 minutes going on about that. So you can go listen to that rant in a different episode, listener, if you really want to. They went and unlaunched the 4080, as was mentioned in previous podcast, the 4080 12 gig, which was good. So they're now relaunching the 4080 12 gig. It's now called the RTX 4070 Ti, which is what it should have been in the first place. And a cut down version of this GPU core is 100% going to be the 4070. That's why it should have been the 4070 Ti, because it uses the same GPU core as the 4070. It doesn't use the same core as the 4080. It never should have been called the 4080. Anyways, so that's a thing they announced. They didn't give us an availability date for it. The launch of the 4080 is, actually just passed. But in kind of a fun twist, so that this is now just the 4080 16 gig, to be clear. I'm not ever going to call it that again because there was only ever one 4080, and that's what this is. 4080, the cost of this thing was supposed to be about $1,300. That's the MSRP for the Founders Edition. Add in board partner cards that have, factory overclocks and dual BIOS switches and the stuff that you pay a little bit extra for those. You expect to pay a little bit over the cost of a Founders Edition card for these cards. However, you don't usually expect to pay about the same cost as a 4090 for them, which is not great.
No.
So they're all just hilariously overpriced. So that's not cool. That being said, like I said, the 4080's launch is looming. Reviews have come out for it, like actual performance, third-party performance data for the 4080 is available. And it turns out that the 4080 does actually perform very well, especially considering how much less power it uses versus the 4090. Like, it uses 25 to 50% less power and performs maybe 10 to 15% worse. It's just not even just not even good. Funny how much more efficient the 4080 is. So that's great. The thing actually performs about as well as an RTX 3090 or 3090 Ti and uses less power than both of those and way less power than the 4090. So from that perspective, the 4080 does look pretty good. The real issue here is that in order to buy a 4080, you're going to be spending probably, realistically, since you're going to have a hard time getting your hands on a Founders Edition card, most likely $1,400 to $1,500, which is just like, oh, well, why don't I just go buy a 3090, especially like a used previously for mining 3090 for less than $1,000? Suddenly the 4080 doesn't make a ton of sense. You get the same performance as the 3090. It's a little bit more efficient, but it costs $500 to $600 more. That's dumb. So yeah, that's where we're at. 4080 is dumb. But at least they've renamed the 12 gig version to the 4070 Ti. So I guess not everything is terrible. That being said, in the camp of not everything is terrible, let's go ahead and move back to something else terrible that Nvidia did. So Nvidia has this habit over the past couple of generations of introducing new standards to plug their power or plug their GPUs into your power supply. With the 3000 series GPUs, they had their own proprietary plug that basically took 3 8-pin PCI power plugs and combined them into a single 12-pin plug, which was obnoxious. Nobody liked it. It meant you had to use a stupid, ugly as sin adapter to plug it in. And if you have a over $1,000 graphics card, odds are you tend to care about what the inside of your computer looks like. And so nobody liked that. You had to order custom cables just to get this thing to look okay. Anyways, it was a big pain in the butt. Nobody liked it. That lasted for one generation. With the launch of the 4000 series GPUs, they're all like, awesome, we're going to be moving to the 12VH PWR, more commonly known as the 12VH power supply standard, which is a new connector that has 12 pins on it for power and then 4 data pins that are also included that kind of help control the amount of power that is available through the connector. This thing is capable of delivering up to 600 watts of power, and while the 4090 doesn't technically use that all of the time, it can, which is hilariously good fun. So this new 12VH connector, not technically an Nvidia proprietary connector, which is good. It is a part of the ongoing change to the power supply standards that are used in PCs. What's fun are the many reports of the 12VH connectors on RTX 4090s melting.
Oh, jeez.
That's good times. So there's been a reasonable amount of independent investigation into this, And like Gamers Nexus is probably the best place to go looking for this. Turns out it's a pretty rare occurrence, and they can't quite nail down exactly what's causing it. Could be issues with the manufacturing of the cables or the manufacturing of specific adapters that are being used with 4090s to adapt your 4 power connectors from an older power supply to the new 12VH standard. Or it could just be user error in not plugging them in quite right or all the way, or bending the cables too much, or so on and so forth. In any of those cases, it seems pretty clear that the standard might be flawed. Not necessarily that like it's the fault of the manufacturers or something, because they were following the standard as it was laid out, but the standard is not sufficiently robust enough to prevent this from happening. And so it looks like the standards organization, PCI-SIG, who is in charge of this, they're considering revising it and changing the 12VH connector itself to address some of these concerns. They're considering changes to the way that the data pins sit in their socket, additional retention mechanisms that will make sure that you have to plug it in all the way before it'll deliver any power. And once you have done that, it'll be more robust from becoming unseated or anything like that. Additional standards to the manufacturing process on that side of things to make sure that, like, you know, the thing is more resistant to bending at the connector head and stuff like that. So that's good things. You like to have that with your standards happen before stuff ships to the consumers. But if anybody's going to get bit by this, I'm glad that it's the people that bought the 4090. Frankly, I don't feel too bad about that. Is it only the
4090 that's getting this, or no?
It requires a pretty significant amount of power being sent through the cable. So currently the only 2 devices that actually use this standard are the 4090 and the 4080. That's it. No, I'm not aware of it having happened on the 4080 to anybody, because for 2 reasons. The 4080 has not been on sale for as long, and it turns out actually the 4080 not selling particularly well. It's in stock basically everywhere because it's kind of stupid. It's too expensive for the performance that it gives, basically. So that one, I haven't heard of it happening. Theoretically, I suppose it could, but we know that it happens on the 4090, and the fact that the 4090 is capable of drawing over 450 watts of power through this connector, and does that regularly while you're playing games or running benchmarks and stuff like that, it's not necessarily surprising that the 4090 is where we're seeing this issue. But it could affect 4080s as well. And honestly, it just makes me happy that AMD for their next graphics cards are just sticking with the standard 8-pin connectors we're all used to.
Yeah.
Good guy AMD, I guess. I don't know. We need to see how those cards actually perform in the wild. They'll be launching like next week or something like that. So
I guess,
yes,
buyer beware, dear listener, with these new cards.
Yeah.
And if you're looking to upgrade on both ends, like, 1, the power connector is going to be different if you have an older power supply. 2,
yep,
maybe wait on the 4090, 4080,
yes,
just till they get those melting things put away. Or,
yep. It's worth noting that it sounds like most likely the change is going to be made on the cable side of things, but there may be some physical changes to the housing of the connector on the graphics card itself.
Yeah.
But either way, that this standard is most likely going to change, and the 12VH connector going forward is going to be slightly different than the 12VH connector that we have right now with the 4080 and the 4090. And that will make 2 generations in a row of NVIDIA graphics cards that have one-off power connectors. Which I think is hilarious. So it's not all bad news, I suppose, because that's a good joke. That's good jokes for anybody who did not buy a 4090, which is most people. So that's good, I suppose. Anyways, that's all the news that I have. It's mostly just NVIDIA sitting around with a bunch of egg on their face pretty much this past week, couple of weeks actually. So good times.
It sucks. Like I said, buyer beware. You know, that's 2 things. I didn't realize the pin connector had changed on those 2. So that would be a big one for me. Like, hey,
Yeah.
If you've got a pretty bulky, 1,000-watt power supply because you just have it, and then you got to buy a connector for it, that would be annoying.
Yeah. I mean, they are shipping an adapter for the 12VH connector that will adapt your standard PCI connectors, your 8-pin PCI connectors,
Right.
power connectors from back in the day to this new standard. But it requires 4 8-pins in order to provide full power to this 12VH connector. Which really does mean that, if you have a good 850 watt to 1,000 watt power supply that you want to hang on to, you should be okay. So long as, you make sure that the connector is fully inserted and isn't bent at a weird angle or anything like that. But it still feels a little bit like a kick in the teeth that even just within the past couple of years, somebody may have bought a 1,000 watt to 1,200 watt power supply thinking to themselves, I am future proofing my system.
Yeah.
And now here's a new power connector for you. So that's dumb. But there are ways around that. If you buy custom sleeved cables from somebody like Cable Mod or even the original manufacturer of your power supply, you can get ones that will, they plug into the power supply modular connection and then they just go straight to a 12VH connector on the other side. So it can be done. It's just more things to think about. And like I said, the biggest issue with it that I see is that Nvidia also had a different connector last generation than the one before. So it's twice in a row now that they've done this. Guys, stop it.
Well, we'll go ahead and we'll move on from there. Landon, what you got for us today?
All right. I've actually got some more CPU talk, but in a different side of things. It's on the mobile side of things.
Ooh.
Qualcomm had their Snapdragon Summit that they do every year in Hawaii. I was not invited. Rude.
Oh, man.
But they announced their new Snapdragon 8 Gen 2 is what the new chip will be called. That will be in a lot of phones starting next year. This is another 4-nanometer chip, so same as last year in that regard. This is a 3.2 gigahertz Cortex X3 chip. That's the primary core on this chip, and then it's got 4 performance cores and 3 efficiency cores. And interestingly enough, it's got a couple cores. They're saying it's the A710 cores. Ensure 32-bit app support still for some strange reason, because if you're updating your app in the Play Store, which is the devices that are going to be using this chip are using the Play Store, if you're updating your app in the Play Store, Google is not accepting 32-bit apps anymore. I mean, you can still download 32-bit apps in the Play Store, but they haven't been updated in a while. So maybe don't download those apps. So I don't fully understand this, because as far as I know, the Tensor chip is 64-bit only. Apple's chips are all 64-bit only. All the software 64-bit only. So I don't fully understand that, but Qualcomm is very wanting people to know this will support 32-bit apps. Okay, whatever. They're claiming that their Adreno GPU is 25% faster than last year's and 40% more efficient than last year's. So that's beneficial. The biggest thing that potentially will benefit people is this is supporting Wi-Fi 7.
What?
Which you can't buy a router for that yet.
I was going to say.
It is future-proof, so you could keep your phone that's running this chip for a few years and be fine. In theory, as long as it gets updated in other senses.
Yeah, I was going to say.
Which Qualcomm has gotten a lot better when it comes to allowing software to be updated on their chips. So hopefully that'll continue to happen. But yeah, like I said, this is going to be on phones starting next year. The first major phone that this will come on is Samsung's Galaxy S23, which usually comes in February.
Yeah.
Usually February. So there you go. That's the new Qualcomm Snapdragon 8 Gen 2 that will most likely be in the phone you purchase, unless you purchase something that's less than $400. Then it'll be something else.
Or unless you purchase an iPhone.
Or if you purchase an iPhone or a Pixel, then you're getting something completely different. And that's fine.
Yep.
All right. Now, on to some Google news. I had to mention this. This isn't really news. Neither of my Google things are news, but they're just interesting. So, one of my favorite phones that I ever owned has turned 10 a couple weeks ago. It's the Nexus 4. It's 10 years old. And I loved that phone. That was such a cool phone. That was the Nexus made by LG, and it had glass front and back. But the best part about the back glass is it had that like glittery type design on the back that was just really cool looking. And I really liked this phone. Just want to read some specs on this device because it's always fun to read specs on old devices like this. So it was released on November 13th of 2012. The display was 4.7 inches, so decent, but small according to now. You also got to remember that was not these were before phones got tall. These were like the more wider aspect ratio phones. So the phone you have now probably fits better in your hand than this one did. Just saying. Yep. It was a 1280 by 768 on the pixel density on that thing. So not bad, but nothing like newer phones. The camera on this, there was one camera on the back, and it was an 8 megapixel camera. This was, I believe, the first Nexus phone that had an 8 megapixel camera, if I'm remembering correct. I could be wrong. Maybe the Galaxy Nexus had, I can't remember, but this one had an 8 megapixel camera, and it was pretty decent. It wasn't, this was before Google really got, really good at the camera stuff. Yeah. So they were decent, but they weren't anything to write home about, that's for sure. It had the front camera was a 1.3 megapixel camera. So that was great. Had the Qualcomm Snapdragon S4 Pro and 2 gigs of RAM. And it had 16 gigs of storage. And the battery was a 2100 milliamp hour battery, so not very big. And it launched with Android 5.1 Lollipop. Or maybe it that's the last one. I can't remember. But yeah, it was a great phone. I absolutely loved it. It was one of my favorite phones that I had. Oh, here we go. It launched with Android 4.2, which was Jelly Bean, I believe.
Yeah.
Yes, it was Jelly Bean. And that had one of my favorite little Easter eggs, the Android Easter eggs that they always used to do. It had just a bunch of floating jelly beans that you could flick around with your finger, It was fun. But yeah, so Nexus 4, 10 years old at this point. I do not have this phone anymore. I did sell it after I bought the Nexus 6 after this, which was a massive phone. That thing was huge. It was nicknamed,
you were the one that usually would sell your old ones.
Yeah. The code name for the Nexus 6 was Shamu, and it was rightfully so because it was a big phone. Anyways, so there's that. Now, on to some more present news. Listener, if you weren't aware, somehow, you haven't been watching TV or looking at any sort of news at all, you probably noticed that the World Cup is going on right now. I'm not going to get into too much stuff with that because I could go on for a long time. But in celebration of this, Google has put a new little game inside of Google. So if you, and I believe this is just on mobile. I haven't actually tried on my computer. Don't think it would work very well on a desktop, maybe on a tablet. But on your phone, if you go to the Google app or Google on your browser, you type in World Cup, and then down at the bottom, a little blue soccer ball will appear right there. And you just click on that, and then there's a little game that you flick a soccer ball past a little goalie, and he starts going faster and faster the more you go, and you just try to get as many goals as you possibly can. And it's just a little fun thing that Google threw in there. You can also choose, they have different games that are going to be played here in the next day or two available to pick from. So you can pick the game that you want to play, and then the country that you want to play as. And then it keeps account of how many goals that country has scored, through while people are playing this little game. And it's kind of fun. I've been playing it every now and then for the past week or so that it's been going on. It's fun. Anyways, that is all of my Google news. But I do have some Apple news because I'm the Apple guy.
I just want to say that this dude is a terrible goalkeeper.
Well, it gets going faster as it goes on.
I mean, it does. He eventually stopped me, but after I took 11 consecutive shots on him, come on.
You got to go farther than that. I think I got up to over 20 on one of them.
Look, it's literally my first time playing. Okay, give me a break.
Anyways, my Apple news is also soccer related, or as people outside of the U.S. call it, football. Not going to get into that argument right now, but Apple TV a while ago and Major League Soccer announced that they were going to be broadcasting all of the MLS games on Apple TV. But now we have more details on what this is. And I know that Wes and Caleb don't care because they aren't really soccer fans like I am. But maybe you are a listener, so I want to just go over some of the details that we know. We know prices. So this is a separate app on Apple TV. It's not part of Apple TV subscription. So you have to pay a little extra for this. If you do not have an Apple TV subscription already, it is $14.99 a month or $99 for the whole season. If you are an Apple TV Plus subscriber, then it is $12.99 per month or $79 for the whole season. So it's a little cheaper if you already subscribe to Apple TV Plus. But at $10 a month for the whole season, it's not horrible. The benefit to this is you'll be able to watch any game anywhere. There's no blackouts. This is worldwide. They have English and Spanish commentary. They also have, you can pitch in the radio broadcast for the home team, from what I understand. So I think it's overall is going to be good. They paid a lot of freaking money. They paid $10 million for the 10-year deal or something like that.
Oh, dang.
Yeah, it's a lot of money. But I think Apple is using this as a way to showcase what they can do with sports broadcasting to try and get either the NFL or the NBA or one of the bigger U.S. leagues to let them broadcast their games. So right now, Apple TV does have baseball games, but for only Friday night baseball. And so it's one game a week. And it's not, from what I understand, it's been interesting. The broadcast itself has been pretty good from what I understand, but the commentators they've gotten are not great. Again, I haven't watched these broadcasts, but that's what I understand. But this one, I think where basically Apple has almost full control of what's going on here. This is really going to be a way that they can showcase this to try to get, like I said, NFL or NBA and start to get those leagues into their Apple TV stuff. So I'm looking forward to this as an MLS fan. So, I'm going to be subscribing because that's what I have to watch my soccer team. That's just what I do. I will mention that if you are a season ticket holder to any MLS team, this is included with your season tickets. So you won't have to pay extra to get this. So if you're not at the game, you can still watch the game on any Apple device or any device that has Apple TV. So Android users, I'm sorry, you can't watch the games on your phone this way. But there's a lot of TVs that have the Apple TV app. You can get the Apple TV app on Roku, on Chromecast. I think Amazon Fire might have the.
I don't think Amazon Fire does, but I know that LG does, and I think Samsung does.
Roku does.
Yeah.
It's available in a lot of places. It's just unfortunately right now not available on an Android device, so you can't watch it mobile that way. But it's available in a lot of other places. So, but that is all of my news for this week.
Nice, very good. Oh, that sounds like console war crap to me. Can't do it on Android, but yet you can do it on iPhone. Just saying.
No, that's just living the life under the Apple ecosystem.
Yeah.
That's how it's always been.
I know. I've been
new.
digging. I guess I've just been digging into that ABK crap, and I'm just like, ugh. Sorry. We'll go ahead and move on. I'm going to kind of, like I said, Microsoft's just got a lot on their plate with that ABK thing, and so there's not a lot to really talk with what they're doing and whatnot. We've got all sorts of games that are coming out, these next.
Most of the main games for the season have launched, right? Like the big titles, they're out now. They got them out just before Black Friday. Odds are probably pretty good that there's some kind of a deal on either buying it or buying stuff in game right now. Like, the Steam Autumn sale is going on right now, which I think is really funny because like it's
the
basically
autumn
winter
sale
here. Yeah, it's their autumn sale. Mm-hmm. Yep.
That was weird.
But,
you said autumn. I'm like, wait, we're in almost December. But, okay.
Yep. But yeah, so that's happening right now, and kind of expect stuff like Humble Bundle did like a gigantic Black Friday sale and stuff like that. So it's kind of the name of the game right now is like the games that are going to be out for the holiday season have mostly released at this point. So like, go ham, buy them, and whatnot.
Yeah, get that back catalog, I guess. Because this beginning of next year, it's just going to be packed.
Yep.
It's so weird to say, but January, February, March is packed with games.
Well, until they all get postponed, which...
Yeah. Okay, you got me there.
Which is what half of them are. They're postponements from last year.
But hey, those God of War, I mean, it came out and people are playing it and loving it, so...
Yep.
Everyone's liking that, so what I wanted to basically mention on here was just the Xbox November update. It's more going towards streaming and the Discord voice chat. So you can now, and I've actually tested this, from your Xbox, you can now just join whatever channel you want. You don't have to use your phone. You don't have to have a third to say, move this to the Xbox, to the console. You can just hop on and say, oh, I want to join this channel, to just right there and there.
That's good.
Good job.
Yeah, that's good.
I figured that was coming because I was like, there's no way they're going to continue. Like I said, they're just testing phases. I get that. So you can just go ahead from your Xbox Series X or S console and just connect to your favorite Discord channel from right there. So, which is good. The next thing is they also had, in addition, had built into Twitch integrations. You can now start a live stream on your Xbox with Light Stream and Streamlabs.
Oh.
So, nice.
Okay.
More options, right? They also said that there's a new Captures app, which is available on Xbox consoles. It uses the same AI as the previous one, but you're now able to update, so that you can update this experience without requiring a full OS update, which is nice. So they kind of, basically what they did is the DVR settings in the Xbox was in the operating system. What they did is they took the DVR settings out and made it its own app. So that way they can start updating the app itself and not the operating system is basically what they did.
Yeah, that's a good move, Apple.
Well, this has been a huge thing for Xbox people, just because the DVR thing is actually pretty terrible on the Xbox. So this is going to help them work on it without working on the operating system, things like that. They also talked about improved power options. They've revamped the power option so you can actually have pretty much close to a shutdown on your Xbox, but still it will update in the background. So, which is cool. Less power. Yeah, sounds good. And they said that all these features should be rolling out obviously in November, but we're almost to the end. So it has come out. I've actually updated with my Xboxes. It's really nice. I tried the Discord thing. It's really nice. It's really cool. I don't usually use the DVR very much. If I find like a cool like Overwatch play of the game or one that I'm like, really, this was play of the game, I'll save it. But like that's just, or something funny that happens. I think I did that actually on our stream. There was something I recorded, like you had died somehow and your like body was like, wee. I was like, and record. That's pretty fun. If you are feeling a little nostalgic, Hyperkin, the company behind releasing a replica of the Microsoft's Duke controller, is now making an Xbox 360 controller.
See, that's actually a good controller, so I can see why they would want to do that. Making a replica of the Duke, though,
it's a niche. And who was
actually nostalgic for the Duke? I guess maybe people who were adults when they played with it. Because, like, I remember as a kid, like,
it was huge,
getting my hands on the Duke and just like sitting there, like feeling like I was holding onto a dinner plate, thinking, "How am I supposed to use this?"
Oh, it's awesome. So, what's cool with this is they've obviously updated it. They brought it forward for like buttons and things. So that way you have the screenshot button, it's been replaced. The start, the forward and back buttons have been replaced with the menu, and I can't remember what they call the other one, but just to update the controller. The downside to this is, I guess you could probably say this is Microsoft's fault, but it's a wired controller. Microsoft does not let their wireless, whatever you'd call it, to everyone else. So anyone that's making a controller like this, it's always wired. So you have that. It is a USB-C cable, if that helps. There to it. So we have that. So, and then the last thing I did kind of want to mention, I already said that, PlayStation's God of War came out. That's a big one that everyone's really excited for. Is actually, I just figured I'd mention, because I've mentioned Netflix and gaming. Still feels weird when I say this, but they have announced that they are working on a AAA PC game in the Unreal Engine.
Why? What? Netflix, what are you doing?
So, yeah, I mean, they're going ham on this, I guess.
Oh my gosh.
They've got 5 studios. They've partnered with Epic to get the Unreal Engine, and they're building a AAA PC game.
I just don't even. Again, why? Like, what does Netflix really have to bring to I guess maybe games based on the IPs of their shows?
I think that's what it is. They see that Halo's doing it. They see The Witcher.
Yeah, but I mean, obviously they can't make a Witcher game.
No, right.
Projekt Red already has that.
But that's what I'm saying. I think this is probably what they're doing. They see that look at CD Projekt Red Cyberpunk. Apparently their Cyberpunk anime that was on Netflix reinvigorated the game. Everybody so
that's
it's
a problem.
It's going back.
Here's the thing: like, what are the high-profile things that Netflix could conceivably make a game out of? Right? Like,
Stranger Things,
The Witcher, obviously, is a big high-profile show, but they can't make a game out of that. Arcane, they can't do. That's League of Legends. There's already a game of that. They've got Stranger Things. They could do that. They've got Squid Game. Like, I don't know what the. And
maybe an Adam Sandler game. I don't know.
Most of these shows and stuff like that are not Netflix's property. Like Shadow and Bone's a pretty good example of that. That's an adaptation of a book series. So like the author of the book series are the ones that they'd have to talk to do that. And if there was significant interest in making a game out of that, then probably other developers would be involved trying to court them to get the rights to make the game. So yeah, it's going to be a Stranger Things game, like almost certainly, because what else could it possibly be?
I don't know if this will throw any more confusion, but the the overseer of this, Chaco Sonny, the former executive producer of Overwatch, is the new head of Netflix Southern California game studio, which will oversee the AAA game PC game development. So
great. I have no idea what the heck to expect from Netflix's whole push into gaming, but so far we've gotten a bunch of weird little like mobile games that they could have just made and released. Like they could have partnered with studios to make those. I don't know why they needed to buy the studios to make those. And then I don't know, a AAA game in Unreal Engine that is almost certainly just going to be another Stranger Things game. Like,
I couldn't tell you. I saw that and I was like, that's interesting. I mean,
wild.
I continue to talk about the Netflix thing, so I'm like, I might as well just
it's just weird.
Yeah, so that's kind of what's going on there. That's pretty much all my news that I have for gaming and for everything else. It's going to be kind of slow this next little bit. We'll talk probably any deals or anything that come up. If Nvidia decides to do something crazy more or something and things start melting, we'll let you know.
The fans start catching on fire. Yeah.
Yeah. So, well, unless Landon has one more thing.
No, I don't.
All right. I think that wraps up this episode. Dear listener, thank you for listening all the way this far on this bottom of the barrel news week. We're talking about Netflix and games, so that's pretty.
Yep.
So if you want to get a hold of us, you can on our social media platform, as well as callingallplatforms.com. If you want to check out any of our videos, you can go to YouTube at Calling All Platforms Gaming. All right, dear listener, have a good week.
Bye-bye.
See ya.
Calling All Platforms is a production of Supporter Sound Studios. To learn more about how you can support the podcast, go to www.patreon.com/callingallplatforms.